David. But so Albert, you raise an excellent point, which shockingly I've. Do you want to just finish the pitch first, or is this okay for me to feedback as you go?
No, yeah, feedback as you guys fine, yeah.
Well, feel free to just say, look, just shut up. Let me finish the pitch. But you raise an excellent point, which incredibly I don't think I ever mentioned when I was talking yesterday, which is that with the choices, if it's educational, obviously, but even if it's like action, regardless of what it is, the choices that you give are very important. And in something like this, exactly as you say, you should always be trying to make the other options the obvious thing that people would do, because you're trying to trick them into doing the wrong thing, because as soon as you do the wrong thing, you've made them think. But if the choice is like unfair, or it's like, then they'll just get pissed off. But if it's a legitimate choice and that is what they would have done naturally, but you're saying, no, actually you don't, then you got a great choice. Yeah. So I mean the obvious example, even though none of you guys fell for it, thank you, is the choice in Lifesaver about run to him now. Since you guys are also like health and safety up to speed, none of you wanted to run to him now, but normally people do. That's the instinctive thing. And so, yeah. So absolutely great. So love it. Okay, drowning. We're going to give choices where it's the instinctive thing. Yep.
Yeah. So actually it's quite similar to the running out thing, actually, because I think the instinct for someone who sees someone drowning is to dive in and try and get them out. And that's like...
What about pull out your cell phone and start recording? No? Okay. That's you. All right, fine. Okay.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, it's a viable option. It's just the last option. And like when I was reading, it was like you should look for like a flotation ring or something that they can grab hold of, the person drowning, and try and pull them in that way. And if there's nothing else, then you dive in to get them. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, you probably just saved my life, Albert. Yeah. Okay.
So that was kind of the choices I was thinking of, because I think I would instinctively just jump in. Like that would be the first thing I think to do. So yeah, things like that is what I was thinking would make a kind of good film.
Okay, great. Cool. All right, now since I've spent far too much of my life thinking about interactive films, I know quite a lot of interactive films out there which have been made. Let me show you an interactive film about drowning, which I haven't watched for years now, but it's pretty good, as I remember. So it's French, and I think it was an ad for some kind of marine supplies company or something like that. As with so many interactive films, it's not online anymore, but there's a YouTube video of it. So here goes it's quite long. Hang on. It's not too bad. It's like, okay, it's 5 minutes. I think let's watch it, because these French people have kindly gone out and made your film for you, Albert. So let's have a look at how it works. Okay, so I will click play. If you can't hear, then please shout out. Here we go.
Ouais. Hey, quelle belle journée là. Oh.
Ouais. Ça va?
Ouais.
Tu prends la barre 2 minutes?
T'es sûr là?
Ouais. Tu le sens bien?
Ok.
Allez. Okay, it's first-person view. That's the first thing that I noticed.
Okay, that voiceover is not me, and is not. So it's presumably...
This is really scary, actually.
Ah, je fais quoi là?
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
Julien!
Quoi?
Attention!
No, dude. Scroll without stopping? Stay on the surface. Are you kidding me? Wait, why can't the guy come back, dude?
Julien!
Okay. Okay, this game doesn't F around, does it? Turn fucking right, bro! Turn fucking right! Oh my god! Okay, I'm scrolling, I'm doing everything that it told me to do. I'm just scrolling up.
Let's just fade out the voiceover. So, yeah, it's a long time since I've seen this. So this is not the same idea. It's the only drowning-related interactive film that I could think of. But I think it's made by a company where they sell life jackets. So the point is, wear a life jacket. So it's not about, learning to save the life of someone. This guy's obviously dead, right? He has no hope because he doesn't have a life jacket. And I think you just kind of scroll like a crazy person, and eventually you get sick of scrolling, and then the you character floats into the depths. Or maybe Ozzy is doing something. Yeah, I don't think there's a happy ending. Oh, right. So yeah, so then it goes on to, I think you're having your last, the life is flashing before your eyes, and I think that's about it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. I mean, lovely, Albert. If you want to, do a drowning film, you've got some source material right there. Okay, cool. All right, great. So, who would? And what was it? What was the key choice that you were thinking of? It was the jump in or throw a life ring.
Yeah. That was one of
Right.
the early key choices.
Okay, fine, great. Cool. Okay, great. What? Fine. So obviously, in terms of like our key mistakes, you've avoided those because it's a life-saving scenario, so we don't have to worry about the puppet master problem. The guy's drowning. Of course, we want to save him. You've nicely got it as it's not a story about someone drowning. It's something where you are saving somebody from drowning. Unseen ratio problem should be fine. Unmotivated choice problem should be fine. So cool. I think we've got a sort of a bill of health. So as you may recall, I have a feud with the Swedish Red Cross. I also have a feud with the Royal Life Saving Society. Fucking bastards. So they wanted to, like everyone, oh, we love Lifesaver. Oh, we'd love to do something like you. But I invited them for lunch at BAFTA, which I paid for. Thanks very much. Now, they're not quite as bad as Swedish Red Cross. Jacob, are they still alive, or have you taken them out already?
Maybe not discuss this over recorded
okay
meeting.
Very wise. Okay, fine. I like the way you think, Jacob. Thanks. Good script writing. Anyway, so the Royal Life Saving Society, well, they did give me some money. They invited me to speak at their conference out in some Warwick or some godforsaken place in the countryside, so that was nice. They paid me to do that. But yes, they were all excited about making a lifesaver for drowning, but it never happened. However, the person who spoke before me at the life-saving conference is this interesting but slightly terrifying guy who does research on drowning. He's at Portsmouth University. All I can say is you are lucky that you're not studying with this guy, because what he does, all his MA students, they become these live guinea pigs for his experiments on what happens when you drown. But especially it's what happens when you're suddenly immersed in freezing water. Because what this guy has discovered is that, in fact, half the time what's happening is people actually have a cardiac arrest when they fall into the water because it's so cold. So drowning, a lot of the time, actually, they're not drowning. They're having a cardiac arrest, and as they die, they suck water into their lungs. And so the coroner fishes them out, and, oh, he's got water in his lungs, he must have drowned. But in fact, he didn't. So, yes, so if you want to know how to survive, the most important thing is relax. So if you fall into the water, you've got like this 10-20 second window. Don't splash, don't try and get out, just relax. Try not to have a heart attack, and then after 20 seconds or so your body is getting used to the cold, and then you can start to swim and all that sort of thing. But it's that key for what usually happens is people fall in, panic, freak out, cardiac arrest, dead. Yeah. Anyway, so on that happy note, let's push on. Jocelyn or Jacob? But yeah, that's great. Thanks, Albert. Who's next?
Michael, what is the sound?
Sorry, that was me. I had to write something down real quick.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Jacob?
Sure. Yeah, I could go. So I have, I would say that I have 3 ideas, almost, you could say. I could start with the first one, where my idea was basically to create a sort of like hostage negotiation simulator, where, and maybe like for police to use in that, where you would like sort of create a hostage situation that's based on data from real events as well. So like in this case, like I read on like what is the most common type of hostage negotiation, and it's usually within family or loved ones actually. For example, like the crazy guy who takes his ex-girlfriend hostage or something. So in this scenario, it would be, I call him Nate, and Nate stands by the entrance of his ex-girlfriend's workplace, having taken the staff hostage. However, the ex-girlfriend is not there as she's been on a doctor's appointment, and then you step into this like situation as it's completely fresh, and you get offered, before you even talk to him, you get offered a megaphone as an example as well, and you can decline it or you can accept it. And like this sort of thing where I'm thinking more towards like things that aren't necessarily wrong, but they're not completely right. So in this case, if you are within distance to communicate with Nate, you shouldn't take the megaphone, because apparently that can scare a lot of hostage takers, usually, that they feel like
that's
attacked.
Great. I mean, Jacob, something else I should have said is that it's lovely to have choices where it's the lesser of two evils.
Mm.
You know, where there's a dilemma, where neither option is completely clear, because then it's an exciting and dramatic choice. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and then it's also like when starting the conversation with Nate, you would be presented with 3 options as an example instead, which is the first one where you ask, how can I help? The second one would be drop the gun, and the third one would be, what do you want? And based on my like 1 hour research, I think that the best option in this case is, how can I help? Drop the gun is obviously perhaps like the worst one, and what do you want is sort of like the in-between one, where what do you want can come back as a question again later throughout the conversation, because that's something that you might want to build towards that question rather than confronting Nate with it immediately, rather than instead like, how can I be of your service? Yeah, that's basically the first idea I have.
Fantastic. Love it. Uh, yeah, great. Why is the girlfriend not there?
She's there. What did I say? She's been on a doctor's appointment, so that's why because that's another thing that I would present later on, like in the simulation as well, that she actually arrives at the scene, and you can choose between letting her speak to him or not, and immediately.
But why is she not there like right away? Because I think in terms of jeopardy and emotional engagement, I mean, I know it makes it immediately much more complex, but yeah, it's obviously it can work both ways. It's just is that if because the fascinating point that you raise, obviously, domestic violence is a horrendous problem which is almost always underestimated in society, and that's fascinating. I had no idea that hostage situations always generally involve friends or family of the negotiator, of the hostage taker, but it makes perfect sense. But in that case, I would have thought to just go all the way and have the girlfriends actually there would be, it's just maximum emotion, maximum at jeopardy. Yeah. But maybe the girlfriend's not there, but then she turns up and maybe she she swaps herself for the hostages or something like that.
Exactly. That's sort of the thing that I wanted to go for as well.
Okay.
The fact that she's not there, like perhaps that the fact that you get to choose between, is she going to converse with him immediately somehow, some way, or should you? And apparently the right answer can be sometimes that it's better to wait, and just because that can usually, when a hostage taker in this case who's emotionally driven suddenly gets what they want, it can sort of activate an unwanted reaction, both from the hostage taker and the hostage negotiator, apparently, in some cases.
Okay. Well, but I think so. I think we can assume that you're doing this commercially, right? This is a this is not like the Royal National Hostage Negotiation Society doing this to teach people how to do hostage negotiation. It's it's a thriller. It's so in that case, what I would suggest is that some form of ticking clock, so that there's some reason why it must be resolved.
Yeah.
There's some MacGuffin where you're familiar with the term MacGuffin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some MacGuffin where it must be resolved, because, as you say, lots of hostage negotiations, it's just we just this guy's crazy. He might be drunk. He might be on drugs, or he might not have enough to drink. I remember a hostage negotiation where some guy had taken a whole bunch of people hostage, and finally he surrendered in return for 6 cans of beer, which I thought was funny. But I told this to a friend of mine, and was in a relationship with an alcoholic, and she thought it was tragic because it just showed that clearly the guy was an alcoholic, and it just reflected the way that with an alcoholic, if they've run out of alcohol, that's all they care about. So that's the thing. But you don't want a game or an interactive film where it's all about wait. That's just going to be boring. But there's some form of MacGuffin, which means it must be resolved now. And so, I think one thing with all these ideas is always a great idea. Just Google it. And just Google it to see what exists out there already. As far as I can see, there's not very much. I mean, there's this thing, hostage negotiator game, but this looks like some ancient card game, which I don't think is available anymore. You can't so I mean, in a sense, it's surprising. I mean, hostage negotiation is such a classic movie scenario.
Mm.
It's surprising, and it's got such obvious. I think it's a genius idea. I really do. I think it's a great idea, Jacob, because there's other great things going for it. One is that it's a conversation.
Mm. Yeah.
And conversation, as I was saying, is the most elemental, simple, fundamental form of interactive event. It's also cheap. That you've got this kind of high drama sort of event where, it's life and death, and you've got police, and you've got, you can have some sort of pyrotechnic thing, for when the this just goes on and on. It's just a card game. It can be spectacular, but it's all in one room, which is fantastic. That's what you always want, right? I mean, it's like, obviously Reservoir Dogs is a genius film, but I always think in many ways the most genius thing about Reservoir Dogs is the whole film is in one room.
Yeah, one warehouse.
That is so clever, but it just doesn't feel like it's all in one room. And there's a couple of cutaways to sort of while we were outside, but yeah. So terrific. Okay, fine. So I sort of interrupted. Have you finished? I just got so excited by
No
the
worries.
idea.
I have two other ideas as well. But
Well,
they're not-
just before we get onto those, so just remind. So, give us your key choice
for the
hostage.
I mean, the thing was there was several, but the first one in relation to the hostage taker would be the dialogue options: drop the gun, what do you want, or how can I help? And
Okay, but so fine. What's the okay? So I see. So this is. So I'm the negotiator. I come up to the something else I should have talked about is as you saw in the Lifesaver and also in Heart Class, we freeze on the choices.
yeah,
So that obviously means it's like a split second. You've got as long as you like. Well, you don't, but the game maker, the filmmaker has got as long as they like for the choices. Sounds obvious, but incredibly, if you go out there in the world of interactive films, in which there are so many unbelievably bad interactive films, they don't always do this. So you will see interactive films where every time there's a choice, there's this kind of ghastly sort of actors just kind of sitting there waiting, and now we can keep going. It just makes you want to weep. But anyway, so we've got our freeze frame. All right, so I'm coming up. I'm the negotiator. What am I seeing? What's in front of me? So it's the hostage taker, and with a group of what am I seeing? What am I seeing?
I said that he stands by the entrance of his ex-girlfriend's workplace.
Okay.
He's taking the staff hostage there, maybe the small workplace of
Right.
some kind.
What's the workplace?
I'm not sure. We could call it just an app startup that will make it maybe perhaps 8 to 10 people.
Good choice. Then lots of people will want them to die. So fine. Okay, great. Okay. But yeah, no, good choice. Also, it's cheap. I mean, the number of so all you need is like some crappy little office which won't have any people in it at the moment anyway. Okay, great. So we freeze, and I've got my choices are drop the gun. What were the other ones?
How can I help, and what do you want? And I was thinking that not necessarily that any of them would create a game over immediately. It's more that if you say, for example, drop the gun, he will retreat back into the building with the hostage taker, and then you have to use the megaphone instead to converse with him. But if you say, how can I help, the conversation continues on face to face instead.
Sorry, Jacob, just run that by me again.
So in for example, we could erase what do you want, because that was just something I came up with real quick.
No, it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it, because so what do you want, and what happens if you choose what you want?
That's the thing. I hadn't really figured it out, but
Okay,
I
that's
realized
fine.
that was
Okay, so drop the gun. What happens then?
drop the gun. He basically retreats back into the building, like from standing in the entrance with someone holding them to the head, holding a gun to the head. Instead, he walks back in again. He retreats back into the building.
Okay.
Because
And the
it's
third choice?
how can I help, which is then the one where he stays by the entrance and continues conversing with you. And that's
Okay.
great.
And is how can I help? Is that the correct thing to say?
It's the most correct outcome. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. All right. That's really interesting. So, yeah, that is all great. So, you raise an interesting point, which, again, I should have talked about yesterday, but everyone was falling asleep because the whole presentation was so long anyway. So another thing with choices, there's two forms of wrong choice in Lifesaver or the real talk about suicide, which we'll see in a few weeks' time. It was too complex for Heart Class, so we didn't get into this. But for Lifesaver and Real Talk, you've got a number of lives when you start, and there are minor errors, and those minor errors will erode the number of lives you've got.
Yeah.
So we don't make a specific wrong answer video for each choice because that would be incredibly complicated and time consuming. For those minor errors, you'll lose a life, lose a life, lose a life, lose a life until finally you go to the dead guy video where you've lost all your lives and you have to start again. And I think with most real world activities, most errors are going to be of that sort of minor cumulative sort. It's not immediate disaster, but it just wears down your capability.
Yeah.
But then there are a few errors, some of which we looked at when we looked at the script, the coding script for Real Talk, where those lead to immediate disaster. And for those, we shoot another bit of video because those are so spectacular and so awful that it's, you want a special little film for those.
Yeah.
So different categories of wrongness is totally fine. I think it's a fantastic premise. The only thing I would say is that I'm not convinced that you haven't. Okay, here's what I would suggest. So think about the example I gave from the Chinese film with the hairdresser is like, the guy says, cut my head off. Here's some money. What do you do? What I would suggest, why not make for your one sort of classic premise, so one classic choice to make people go, yes, fuck, that's great, I want to give this man some money. Have the hostage taker give you the policeman, he gives you an ultimatum. So it's some kind of lesser of two evils, like I'm going to kill this person, I'm going to kill this person, or I'm going to kill this person or some other thing. I'm not sure what the hell it is, but some sort of, oh my God, what do I do? Type choice. So the hostage taker is being active, is not sort of waiting for you as the hostage negotiator to sort of offer to do A, B, or C. The hostage taker is forcing you to respond to some terrible Sophie's Choice type choice, where it's kind of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But there's no way out. That's a great choice. And I think because of the scenario that you've come up with, it just lends itself to that naturally. Love it.
Yeah, because I think that was my third idea, which was just to simulate the tramline dilemma, like pulling the lever to save 5 people but killing 1 in the process, type of thing.
Okay, we'll just hold that thought.
Yeah.
So Jacob, that's already one brilliant thought. Let's do Jocelyn before she starts dropping anything else on herself to, or whatever. So let's do Jocelyn, then we'll come back to your next 2 ideas. Okay, but terrific. Okay, Jocelyn,
Okay. So my idea isn't as spectacular as Jacob's, but I came up with my idea because of something that happened to me this year. So
See,
basically,
it's already better, right? You've already made it personal. So that's great. So already for your pitch, that's brilliant, Jacob. Just look how she's like totally screwed you, right? It's like one of these pitch competitions. Everyone's thinking, oh, well, that's good. And then Jocelyn comes in and just, take that fucker. Okay, right, fine. We're all
so
ears, Jocelyn.
basically,
Okay, it's not a sort of, yes, it's personal. Yep, love it.
basically, I walked home from my friend's place at night and I got followed by a man that I didn't know. And
Right.
I was on the phone with my boyfriend, and at one point I realized that there's nothing he can do on the phone to help me. And I was in a situation where I didn't know if I should now like run home or call the police, but I knew that if I called the police, I couldn't do anything. Like I didn't know where to wait. I had to go somewhere. And my initial questions during this time, and also me feeling so helpless, were: do I run? If I run, where do I go? Do I call the police? And will they be here in time, or will something happen to me? So the man that followed me kept saying he's coming to my place. And he said a lot of other nasty stuff that I don't want to repeat. But through this experience, I came up with the concept of having um, having interactive scenarios for women to learn self-defense in that way. And they're not what?
Jocelyn, do you know how long I've been trying to make a women's personal safety interactive scenario?
It's 2020. Now is your time.
So I've been trying to make since about 2013. Sorry, 2003.
Really?
Yes. Since before CPR. CPR was the second idea. The first idea was women's self-defense, or women's personal safety. And
Yeah.
it's a scandal that it still hasn't happened. And it absolutely breaks my heart because you're completely right. It's incredibly important. It will be so useful. But let's just keep going. Sorry, I interrupted. And thank you for sharing your horrible personal story. Please keep going. Yeah.
So basically, I was thinking of different situations that seem very trivial and very normal to, I don't want to say men, but a lot of men, and where women already know that, oh, maybe I shouldn't go down that parking lot, or maybe I shouldn't take that route because it's a bit dark and there's not enough light and stuff like that. But in the end, I did a lot of research, and basically, most assault happens with people you know. So there's only a very small percentage of things happening in an environment where you don't know where the person assaulting you is. And with my mission that I wanted to create is a mission where women are their own heroes, in a sense where they realize that there are red flags in different situations. Like, for example, this is my very, very first example that I came up with after reading a paper of how predators groom women in supermarkets. So it's basically the woman, so you're shopping in a supermarket and someone bumps into your cart aggressively, and what's your first reaction? So predators use this. If you apologize to them, although it's not your fault, they already know you're an easy target on a psychological level. So this is already a determined choice that you're making without even realizing it. It's not even, it seems so trivial. Like, why would I apologize? But then again, there's people, they just apologize because they tend to apologize more. I'm one of those people. And you already are, for them, you already are like an easy target in that sense. So this is one of the first scenarios I came up with. And then obviously I want to get into it and build it up. So it goes from a pre-conflict situation into an actual conflict situation where you have to defend yourself in order to not get assaulted how the person wants to assault you. That was my idea.
Great. Love it. Um, yeah. So I'm just seeing if I still have any trace of my very first interactive film. I'll dig it up. It'll take a while because it's 2003. But you might be right, Jocelyn. Maybe the time has come. But it's a absolute scandal. It breaks my heart. Maybe, sorry, forgive me. So I'll talk a little bit about this because this is my experience of trying to do an idea similar to what you said. Now, maybe things have changed, but so this was what happened. So in about 2003, I got very excited about interactive film. It was about the time that I did that CPR course that then led to Lifesaver. But the first thing I thought of was exactly what you talked about, a women's personal safety piece. And I found a charity called the London Centre for Personal Safety, which is an interesting charity which tragically now no longer really exists. Sorry, no. First I contacted a couple of women's personal safety charities, and then I discovered this extraordinary thing, which may have changed, but this was the case in the mid noughties, that these women's personal safety charities didn't want to encourage. No, actually, I know it's still true. They don't want to encourage women to fight back. And this is on the basis of an idea that if you sort of get into a fight, it'll be dangerous and you might get hurt in the fight. And, well, yeah, but what's your point? That's not a, I think there's a fundamental thing, which is that they don't like fighting, which is fair enough. That makes perfect sense. But where I would strongly disagree with them is that because they don't like fighting, that they should therefore not teach physical self-defense skills. Because as the people at the London Centre for Personal Safety said, if you know those skills, it then becomes a lot easier for you to actually avoid having to use them because people are more calm. They have more of a sense that if push comes to shove, if this creepy guy really does something, I do have some clue what to do. If you know that, then actually you're more likely to act well or do the right thing, as opposed to, if, for example, with domestic violence, which of course, as you say, is like the main form. Domestic violence, the woman grabs a knife out of the kitchen cupboard and sticks it in his ribs. That happens a lot, and then she's done for murder. So that's one consequence of ignorance. But these charities, that's the way they think. They don't want to talk about fighting because fighting is bad. So one of these charities put me in touch with the London Centre for Personal Safety, which is part of this impact school of women's personal safety, where they have this very interesting form of training. They have this kind of, the trainer dresses up in this huge, massively padded suit, so you can just punch and kick and do all sorts of things, and so it's very real. And it grew out of things like judo. The founder had this traumatic experience that this woman who was an expert judo expert, was attacked and raped, and he couldn't understand how this was possible. But then he did research on the nature of the attacks, and the problem is that lots of attacks, for example, the woman is knocked on the ground to start with, at which point all your judo training is completely useless, because judo is about being on your feet. So impact training is much more about real life situations. It's about fighting from the floor, and so on. So so great. London Centre for Personal Safety, I loved them. There was this fantastic woman. She was really short, Claudia da Silva. She was about that tall. And she was this incredible dynamo Brazilian woman and she was like the guiding spirit of this center. But we never managed to get funding. There was just too scary. It was too weird. It's too, CPR, well, okay, that's nice and polite. But this, tragically, Claudia died of cancer in about 2012. And her husband, who was, the other half of the charity, was heartbroken. And the whole charity has now kind of fallen to pieces. But I still would love to do it. I still think it's a scandal that it's not out there, because there are a whole bunch of sort of basic principles where, exactly like you say, do I call the police? But they'll be here in 5 minutes, and by then it'll be too late, and I'm walking, so how do I call the police? Because that's a fantastic dilemma which we could which you could really easily teach people a real a life-saving skill, just by doing that. And then another thing is, there's always the thing of, but if you teach people, then the bad guys will do it. Well, but the bad guys are going to know this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
They know how to Google stuff. That they've got their little chat forums and so on. So why not teach the good women this as well? Plus, something like how to ring the police if you're walking alone. That's a great tip, because even if the bad guys know it, it just shows them that they are vulnerable. Just because this woman is walking in the street, there are things that she can do. So I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's an excellent example of something that would require interactive video film would be fantastic for, and I've thought it for the last 17 years. Sadly, I've never been able to make it happen, but I think it's a great idea. Yeah. But it just shows. But you see, but seriously, like, one problem is because I'm not a woman. So seriously, if you're genuinely interested in that idea, pursue it, and you may well find that doors open to you, because it's not some kind of creepy old white guy who looks like he should be lurching out of a dark corner. It's being done by a young woman, and that makes a difference, and that's totally fine. It should make a difference, and I'll be delighted to help out as an advisor or something like that, because it's such an important topic, and the teaching on it is so bad. It's the classic, if you think back to the presentation, all these training forms are dominated by companies and people who make their money from face-to-face. And personal safety training is the same. Everyone who's in the field needs people to physically come to a physical gym to learn their stuff. That's how they get paid. But of course, most people can't be bothered. Most people don't have time, so they never learn. Yeah. Anyway, so Jocelyn, I'll dig up my first ever interactive film, and I'll dig it up. It's just warts and all. It's pretty scary, I gotta say, actually, and it's very intense. It is a classic stranger danger, which, as you say, is not correct, or we wouldn't do it that way, or one wouldn't do it that way. But yeah, it's a great idea, and I hope it happens one way or another. Yeah, cool. So, what was your choice? Was your choice the thing of walking home, and do you call the police, or what do you do? Just tell me again what the dilemma is.
So I was in the street. There were no people. I didn't see people.
I know this is you, but in this film. Okay, so the me character, I'm in the street. There are no people except the creepy guy.
Yes.
And the creepy guy is saying, he's saying, I know where you live. I'm going to come to your place, or something like that. Right.
And it basically depends. Obviously, if there's no one there, you can't run to those people. In my scenario, I ran to someone else because I saw someone getting out of their car. So I ran towards them and told them that this man is threatening me. But in my dilemma, I was thinking that you either call the police and you have to defend yourself in the meantime because you can't walk home, or you run home and risk that the man is following you and now knows where you live, and then call the police, or he even enters the house with you.
Right. Fantastic dilemma. I have no clue what the right thing to do would be, but that's great. That's exactly what you want, right?
Yeah.
Is I mean, obviously the people coming out of the car, and you don't really want that one because that's a bit sort of, also dramatically it feels like it's an unfair,
Yeah.
Do you know the term Deus ex machina? Not the game, but Deus ex machina, where like some extra thing suddenly comes plonk out to help the hero. So you don't want that one. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic dilemma.
And obviously, if you call the police or get in a confrontational situation and you're in the conflict then and you have to fight back, this is where the learning starts and where you can use the techniques you learn in training through the interactive training, basically.
Yeah.
So by holding, I don't know, there's different like situations where you have to hold your keys in order to poke someone, in order to run away and stuff like that. A lot of people think you have to put the keys in between your fingers and punch like this, but then you're going to break your own fingers. You have to hold the key, for example. That's all I read in research. I didn't know myself, but
Right.
I had to.
I think that's referring. Is that referring to putting your thumb like that?
Yes.
That's the finger breaker. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a key, you should always hold it like this and stab like this, basically, instead of punching like this, because you're more torn to injure yourself when punching like this. Especially if you have the key here, it could just flip and then you hurt yourself in the end.
Right. Okay. Well, you see, that's the thing where, and this is same with the drowning project, or indeed with the hostage taking project. It's really important to have experts, people who can who know their stuff, and so for all the things that I do, I'm very clear. I'm not an expert on CPR. I'm not an expert on suicide prevention. I'm not an expert on the climate crisis. I am an expert on interactive filmmaking, and I work with these people. They are the experts. There just needs to be a really clear division of knowledge and responsibility, and it's not your problem. The expert says what the thing to do is, and then you just execute that. Great. Fantastic. Okay. I think also, there's another thing which is we asked yesterday about being political, and when we're talking about environmentalism, and these days everything is political. Everything is political, and the great thing about your personal safety film, especially if it's being made by a woman, is that politically it's great. However, as I say, in my experience, the tricky thing is that the charities are not on your side. That they still want they just want talking. And I was talking to a friend of mine who did a thing with a personal safety thing, and yes, they were absolutely clear. No fighting. No, it just needs to be verbal. Just needs to be, diffusing the situation, which I just think just absolutely sucks. But that's fantastic. Bravo. Well done, Jocelyn. So Jacob, dilemma. How are you going to get Jocelyn back after there you were, like your fantastic hostage negotiator. Jocelyn just completely undercuts it with this this is my own personal experience. Everyone's going, oh God, poor Jocelyn. So what's next? Idea 2. No pressure. And Albert, next time you need to say, there was this time I nearly drowned and no one came to help me. And I was thinking, if only someone, so that you just do the Jocelyn trick, okay? You just make it personal.
I did have a second idea based on a personal, which was like an earthquake thing, because I was...
Okay, just hang on, just hold that idea. We're just seeing if Jacob can dig his way out of the hole that Jocelyn has kind of tossed him into. Yes, go for it.
Well, I could just go with the third one that I come up with last, which was because it's very easy. It's just a tramline dilemma, pulling the lever or not. Like 5 people on a track, 1 on the other, and just simulate that. That was just basically one.
Okay.
Idea.
So obviously you could pitch it better than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So just rewind a little bit. So imagine that you're desperate to make this thing happen. So just pitch it to us a bit more, like in a bit more pitchy type way.
Otherwise, I think because it was just like such a quick idea, I think the other one would be better to pitch, probably.
Okay, so what? It's like a Sophie's Choice, lesser of both evils type dilemma. So, sorry, when you say the tramline idea, I haven't heard it. What is the tramline idea?
It's basically like it's a moral psychology test that's been around since the 60s, which is, I think, when I start to talk about it, you've heard of it. It's basically this idea of there's a train coming, and you're standing, and on the train, on one track, there are 5 people who like can't move from the train, like either up from the track, either they're like tied to it or something that makes them like unable to move away from the track.
Right.
And you can pull a lever that redirects the train onto another track, but on that track it's just one person as well, unable to move. And sort of the moral dilemma that it presents with that is, do you save 5 people by actively killing 1 person, or are you completely passive in this action and let 5 people die? And it's been like discussed up until today in terms of like morality and stuff.
Oh, I see. Because if you don't do anything, then the 1 person will die. Sorry,
if you do nothing, 5 people will die.
Okay.
If you do pull the lever, then you're a participant in 1 person's death, because that train gets redirected to the one track where there's just 1 person.
Okay. So one thing I'd suggest is there's the dilemma to work into your hostage negotiation game. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that the hostage taker does to you, that presents to you, something like that. He's going to do X unless you do Y.
Exactly.
There's a great
that was
dilemma.
Basically the idea as well, that I wanted to mask it, not make it literally like a lever and a train coming.
Well, that's the thing, because there's, it's like, as soon as you make it train tracks and doing a lever, then it becomes completely remote from.
It becomes a cartoon.
Or like a silent movie or something like that, and not something personal. But the point that you make is a great one. That is nice because actually it's actually slightly better than a Sophie's Choice. So Sophie's Choice, obviously, the horrible. You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Both
so the horrible SS guy says which. Either. Oh, I guess she does have the the Sophie's Choice does have the idea of passivity. So if you're passive, both the children will be killed. If you actively choose one, then only one will be killed. So it's a similar sort of thing. Great.
Yeah.
Just work it into the hostage taker
I'd say
thing.
so as well. Yeah, because it's more of the moral dilemma that intrigues me with that aspect, not necessarily the specifics of it.
So I think one question then is to chew over, and I must say I don't think I've ever actually done a choice like this, The question is how. So there you've got like an interesting moral dilemma. Now, all the choices in Heart Class that you did this morning, or all the choices in Lifesaver, all the choices in We'll Talk About Suicide, none of those are sort of like extended dilemmas of that sort, because they're not drama. They're, because your project is a commercial project. It's it's entertaining, but it's challenging, all that sort of thing. So there, I guess the question is, how are you going to present that choice? Because I would say that if you just if you just make it one of these quick fire Heart Class style, you've got 10-second choices, you're kind of selling it short, because the hostage taker, he moves up, he's just about to press the button to detonate the bomb that will kill the 5 people, but you pull out your gun and shoot him, even though by shooting him you're also killing the human shield type hostage that he's got in front of him, say. So I'd say that if you just, so here's hostage taker, and he's moving across. He's got his girlfriend as human shield. He's moving across. He's about to press the button. You've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What do? And so you shoot, but you have to shoot through the girlfriend. So she dies, but you save all the other people. But you've got that super dramatic moment, but you've kind of blown it in just like a few seconds. What you could do is some sort of see both options thing. This might totally suck. It could be done extremely badly, but maybe he's moving across, cut to negotiator, cut to one possible future where he shoots through the girlfriend and kills the hostage taker. Then cut back to the hero, cut back to the other option where he doesn't do anything, and I think maybe to make it 10 people in the startup, they get killed. And then back to the me character, you've seen those two choices, you've seen them both played out, in a sense, like, because he's visualizing in his head what's going to happen with each path. And then you have your 10 seconds, because then you've sort of made it a lot clearer what the choice is. So yeah, I think that would be a great choice. And obviously it's a commercial project, so that you don't need to persuade a charity in the way that Jocelyn would need to. It's great. And obviously there's a rich genre of hostage taker movies, and fantastic. All right, cool, lovely. And what happened to your second idea?
My second idea was just what did I say? What did I say? I've forgotten. Basically like a school shooting simulator where you're students, but that's the thing. Like,
you
it's
keep
already
stealing my fucking ideas. What can I say, bastards? I do all this for you. You go into my head and you steal my ideas. Yes, go on. Just go ahead. Hang on. I've already done the pitch talk for you, Jacob. But just keep talking. Yeah.
But a school shooting simulator where either you're in the corridor or you're in a classroom and you hear gunshots, and it's sort of like your first big choice is, what do? Do you blockade your classroom or do you make a run for it? And the right choice is blockade your classroom rather than start running rapidly, apparently.
Is it? I mean, since you haven't wasted like a week of your life writing a pitch doc for this, I can tell you that that's actually a subject of intense debate.
Oh.
Yeah. So in the UK, I mean, thank God, touch wood, we haven't had a shooter attack, well, for years and years. We've had stabbing attacks, which are obviously inherently far less bloody. But in the UK, a mass casualty attack, the UK algorithm is run, hide, tell. And in other words, you run away from the mass casualty attackers, you hide somewhere, and then you tell someone about it. You call the police. In the US, it's not that anymore. It's run, hide, fight. And so I think they kind of assume you're going to tell as well. But the key thing is that now with most US training, the idea is that you run away, you try and hide if necessary. If you can't get right away, you try and hide, but you get ready to fight. And so it's a absolutely crucial part of their whole training is there you are, you're in the here we go, shoot survivor. You are in the you're trapped in the classroom and the bad guy comes in. Then what? Because the thing is that what they've done, not to be too sort of revolting about it, but Virginia Tech. Sorry, just one thing generally, guys. If I get onto a subject which is personally distressing, please feel free to check out. Okay?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about your personal histories, but especially with the question of suicide or self-harm, but even with something like this where it's a lot less likely, so just feel free to leave or tell me that you don't want to talk about it or something like that. Anyway, so Virginia Tech, which is like 2008 or something like that, in a sense, so what happened was Virginia Tech was this little university, and crazy guy comes in armed with all sorts of weapons, and everyone did the run, hide bit. They barricaded themselves in their classrooms, and what happened was that some of the classrooms, the students and the teacher were passive. Some of them, they fought back. And basically what happened was the ones that fought back, the guy gave up. He went on to the next classroom. As I may be wrong, obviously research this yourselves if the answer is important to you. The ones that fought back, the guy gave up and went on to the next classroom. The ones where they were just passive and hid, they were all murdered. So I think that's why the States, they're now much more run, hide, fight, that you should be ready to, because the thing is that if there's 20 people, even 20 children, I mean, actually there's a lot you can do. There's a lot of stuff you can throw. And so that's the idea. So anyway, so Jacob, I just am always trying to make your life as easy as possible. So I've already done your pitch deck for you. Okay, Shoot Survivor. So it's a real live action crisis simulation video game. Sense of the terror being checked, active shooter situation. You decide what to do to escape. You can play as 3 regular people trapped in the same crisis. It's Friday night at a small bar in the US, and then blah 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 blah. This is one of those terrible shootings did happen in this actual bar. You're there, everyone's dancing, there's kind of flashing lights, and as happened in Orlando, there was a lag because the guy was shooting for a considerable amount of time before half the people on the dance floor knew what was happening. Because it's noisy as hell, right? There's flashing lights, there's, and sort of pop, 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 pop of an assault rifle. They just didn't notice, and they were busy, trying to get off with, the significant other, in front of them. But then a wave of panic came out, and you could, in this case, you could choose who you want to be. In retrospect, that's not a great idea because you've immediately tripled your shooting complexity, right? You've got 3 heroes, but I think the idea was that this would be expensive, so we wanted to make it more flexible and more game-like. So the people that I was doing this with said, no, have 3, one of whom is 4, and then phase 1 is run. So okay, we go into the details. You have a bunch of So your first choice. So you choose to be Mike. First choice. Wrong choice. Freeze and hide in the bar. Right choice. Run to get out if you can. So so on and so forth. You can choose to be the manager. You can choose to be the young woman out with her friends. So here, so this is an interesting choice, and again, this is based on all sorts of ghastly sort of stories about what happens in these situations. So you're Emily. You're with your friends. Your friends freeze. So right, wrong. So do you just run away from them? No. Do you tell them, come on, let's go, go? Yes, that's what you do. But they won't leave. There's your dilemma. They won't leave. So what do you do? Wrong choice is stay with them, and you all get killed, and that that happens. Right choice is get out. You've tried to get them to go, but it's not up to you, so you try and leave. Shooter locks the doors, calls 911, says he has a bomb. You're trapped. So obviously these guys often have suicide vests and that sort of shit. Usually it's fake, or often it's fake, but but who knows? So then it's the hide phase. So then you're trying to get out. One of them gets wounded. So one thing that this incorporates is because this is like a sort of a semi-instructional thing. It's supposed to be interesting, but it's supposed to be a game, but it's a game that saves lives. So one of the key things is how to handle a heavy bleed, and actually, interestingly enough, since the Iraq War in Afghanistan, doctors have put far more emphasis on stopping bleeding. So stop the bleed is a really big thing now with all these mass casualty attacks. You should just get any fucking thing you can and just stick it in the wound, because if they bleed out, that is what's going to kill them. Worrying about infection, that's like way down the line. So so in this case, we've got a hero who's with a friend who's been shot, and you plug with anything. Tampons are great, but it can be anything. Police arrive. We've moved into CPR because the friend's gone into cardiac arrest. There's an explosion. Then you're someone else. You're hiding in the back office. You lock yourselves in. You make yourself silent. You stop the bleeding. Then the shooter finds you. You've prepared. You've barricaded the door. And there's explosion. So it goes on. So then we go into the final phase, which is fight, where ultimately you end up trapped, and you just flail out with anything that comes to hand, fire extinguishers, whatever the fuck you can, and you just throw them, hit them, whatever. And so that's the final mano a mano battle, and you swarm him, and that's the yeah. But yes, but so a nice little twist. You've got the guy's assault rifle. The police come in. The right thing to do is put down the assault rifle. Otherwise, of course, they will burst in. They're as scared as anybody. If they see you holding an assault rifle, they'll shoot you, which would be obviously a great final twist. But yeah. So afterwards, recovery for them and for you. And there's a thing about post-traumatic stress disorder. But key thing is, don't let it change your life. This is a game. The chance of it happening is almost zero. So don't let them win. Get out there and have a good life. So you're welcome, Jacob. Yeah, there we go. Another great idea, and very topical. I mean, obviously, it's actually been a while now, isn't it? Coronavirus has sort of wiped out mass shooting attacks. So that could be a problem. I mean, maybe no one's going to be interested in your mass shooting attack idea that you stole from me. Because it's whatever. That's so 2019. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, but still, yes, great idea. And it's it's nice because it's sort of commercial gamey idea, but it's also a kind of good work. You can have stop the bleed. You can have CPR. You can have all sorts of other kind of genuine skills built in that people would learn. Great. Okay. And Albert, so to wrap up with, hit us with your real life trauma idea that you probably stole from me as well. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I don't really have a pitch for it because I only thought of it a minute or two before. I was talking to Jacob before the class, and he told me about the shooting idea, which made me think of something, which was what to do when there's an earthquake. Because when I was in Japan, there was an earthquake, and I didn't know what to do. Thankfully, it wasn't a big one, so it was all fine. It only lasted for a few moments. But if it had been a big one, I wouldn't have known what to do. And I was in a ramen bar, and obviously they didn't speak English there. So I was like, what would I have done? They would have told me, get down or whatever. And I'm like, what do I do? So I was just going to say that I thought about that, but then I didn't have time to do any research into what the appropriate actions are and stuff.
Right. Great. Yeah. So, sure. I mean, I have also been in an earthquake in Japan. I was in a cave, bizarrely enough, a cave temple, which in a sense would have maybe quite a good place to get crushed to death because, the god of the temple would presumably have welcomed me into his, bathhouse in the sky. But anyway, it didn't. But yes, absolutely. It's another great example where, there's a series of things to do. Everyone thinks it would be nice to do, but they've never kind of got round to it. Your obvious target market is California, where they've been waiting for the big one for decades and decades now, or Japan, where they have sort of earthquake drills. The only problem with earthquake is it's expensive to shoot. And because of course I have thought about, I don't think I've ever actually pitched it, but I have thought through the idea of doing an earthquake simulator. How are you going to do the shaking? You're going to need a shaking set for it to work. That's not impossible. I mean, the Geological Museum, or no, what's it called now? The Science Museum, but the geology bit of the Science Museum, they have an earthquake simulator. It's this cool little, have you ever seen it? It's this little, it's this little bit of floor.
I've been there.
Yeah. So you tell us what it is, Jocelyn.
Is it the tiny store?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a tiny store, and you walk into the store basically, and then the earthquake starts and everything starts shaking. And it's really crazy to see how much the floor, because it's on this moving floor basically, and you see how much the floor is moving, and it's incredible actually.
Yeah.
How they made that.
Yeah, no, it's great. So, that could be your solution. Somehow you sleep with the director of the Science Museum, or pay them some money or something, so that you get to use that little shaking floor thing as a location, because it seems to be great. And it's a Japanese, is it? I think it's the Philippines actually, isn't it? Isn't a simulation of something in the Philippines. Am I wrong about that? Anyway, it's an East Asian convenience store, I think. So it's not a million miles from a Japanese ramen bar. But yeah, so that's tricky. And then also earthquakes generally lend themselves to sort of like global, devastation everywhere. So if you can fight your way out, everything around is going to be broken in some way. So again, that adds to the expense. So it's the sort of idea where potentially, I know that I'm always anti CGI, but it's the sort of thing where maybe it lends itself to CGI, because obviously if it's CGI, you won't have the same emotional connection, but also you can easily do the shaking floor, and you can easily do sort of, well, maybe not easily, but it's comparatively straightforward to make a landscape filled with broken buildings and so on once you get outside. But generally, the whole idea of just since I know you've stolen this idea out of my head anyway, so I'll just tell it to you anyway to just save you the trouble. But the other idea similar is hurricane tornado. And the advantage with that is that in the US, which is a nice big market, they're very seasonal. There's tornado season. And a friend of mine who loves Lifesaver has said to me many times, Martin, fuck's sake, you should do like a tornado, what to do in a tornado simulator, because every year tornado season rolls around, and apparently if you go onto the Weather Channel and that sort of thing, it's back-to-back ads for four-wheel drive vehicles, generators, emergency supply kits, and he keeps on saying what you should have is your, interactive simulator of what to do in a tornado if the tornado hits your house. How do you survive? Crush wounds, similar to a earthquake, right? Crush wounds and so on. And yeah, so again, the tricky thing is you'd need a big budget if you're doing it live action, both to do the tornado and to do the devastated landscape, because part of it's going to be you get out, and now you've got all your neighbors, and there's a neighbor trapped under a whatever, and there's someone else with terrible deep cuts from glass and all that stuff. But sure, absolutely, that would work. That would work. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, so I think we're just about there. Anything else, or are we good to go? No? Okay. So, Jocelyn, I will try and dig up this thing called Fight Back, which is my first ever interactive film that you stole from me, but I forgive you. So next time we're doing the Climate Emergency Interactive. So please get up to speed with the world of sort of political protest films, related films, just to kind of refresh your memory. But you've had some really great ideas here. So obviously with the final deliverable for the course, do think about some of these ideas that we've discussed as the example that you do for your practical piece of script, because I think some of these ideas are absolutely terrific, and would be very strong and would work very well and would be lovely portfolio pieces, and indeed would be lovely things to get made and might get made. Jocelyn, what I would really suggest you have a look at is just do a little bit of Googling, and who knows, maybe Switzerland is different. By the way, was your experience in Britain or in Switzerland?
In Switzerland.
Okay. So maybe Switzerland is different. Maybe it's just British and America, like an Anglo-American thing, they have this hang up. Or just do a little bit of Googling. Maybe some people are into teaching women what to do in these situations, because in which case, you should have a think about, is that something you would want to pursue? Because You know, it definitely needs to be done. And so often people say to me, "Oh, why haven't you done? Martin, you bastard, why haven't you done a personal saving? You don't care about women, obviously." And then I tell them this story, and they go, "Oh, okay." But yeah, we've just never managed to make it happen. But I would absolutely love to see it happen somehow. Yeah. Yes. Cool. Okay. Anything else? No? Great.
Not that
All
I can
right.
think of. No.
Thanks very much, guys. Great work. Well done. Bravo.
Thank you.
See you next week. Okay. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.